It's been a while since I've done a industry icon series, and I've got a new one. And I'm going to introduce you to this person in just a minute, and you're going to want to hear her story. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, project managers, estimators, IT personnel, sometimes even customers. On this show, we are connecting at the human level so that we connect the world. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube and you like this content, please hit the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new content is being published. If you happen to be listening to this on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other audio podcast platforms, would you mind consider leaving me a rating? Hopefully it's a 5-star rating. And if it's not, let me know what I can do to make this a 5-star rated show. Those two little steps helps us beat that nasty algorithm so more people can hear our message so we can educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of more people in the ICT industry. Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What are you doing? Do you know I do a live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and if I can figure out the whole Instagram thing, I'll do it there too, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD any questions about installation, documentation, certification, estimation, project management, even career advice. But I can hear you now. But Chuck, I'm driving my truck at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. on Thursdays. I can't watch the video. I'll get in an accident. I record them, and you can go back and watch them. You can watch them either through the website or go right straight to YouTube. And I also post the audio a day or two afterwards as well. So there's no reason to miss that. I answer the questions, and you could submit your questions in advance to questions@letstalkcabling.com. Those get preference. And finally, while this content is free of charge, and it will always be free of charge, if you would like to support this channel, there's a couple ways you can do it. There's a QR code on the screen. So just click on that QR code. You can buy me a cup of coffee. And if you buy me a cup of coffee, I'll send you a Let's Talk Cabling show sticker. You can also schedule a 15-minute one-on-one Zoom call with me, after hours, of course, and we can talk about whatever it is that you want to discuss. Or you can become a Patreon member, where you get additional access to me. And you can also visit our Amazon link page off the website, look at some of the ICT products that we have there. And if you buy something through that website, you won't pay extra, but I will get a little stipend if you do. Because I need to start making more money with this podcast because it's costing lots of money. And finally, we're also accepting applications for corporate sponsorship to help support our mission of educating, encouraging, and enriching the life of people. So if that aligns with your company core values, then reach out to me through one of my social media platforms or through my email at chuck@letstalkcabling.com. I have not done an industry icon series in a while. And it's not because I just put it off. It's just because I've been busy doing other shows. People have been sending me ideas. And if you have an idea for a show, absolutely send it to me because I love doing those kinds of shows because I know I'm giving you the information you want to hear. But we also have to recognize upcoming stars in our industry. And I happen to have one today. Now, this one, she just recently got her RCDD. She is a freshly minted RCDD. She's had it for, I think, 2 weeks now, maybe 3 weeks. We'll let her tell us when she got it. So let's welcome to the show, Jasmine Scinto. Jasmine, how you doing?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me, Chuck.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So we always start off with, tell us about your low voltage industry. Give us a brief history of how you got in this industry and a little bit about your work experience.
So yes, I started out actually in the electrical industry. I know. uh, but I was in the electrical industry for almost 10 years. And then when I wanted to go in-house, I decided to go into estimating. I found a job with a low voltage estimating company, and that's where my passion began with the low voltage industry. From there, I went into consulting as a project manager. And just recently, 3 weeks now, I am now a actual low voltage consultant.
Nice, nice. So we won't hold it against you that you used to be working for electrical company. We won't hold that against you. Um, Although some people will, but if they do, I'll just reject them from the show. That's not a problem because for some reason there's a ill feeling when it comes to between electricians and low voltage people. I have theories on why that is, but it doesn't matter what my theories are. It just is. So you come from the electrical side. How did you hear about the RCDD program?
So I started hearing rumblings about it when I got into estimating, but didn't know a ton about it. We had some RCDDs within the, inside as project managers and estimators, but I didn't think too much of it. But I did have the TDMM on my desk for the several years I was with the company, and I would like kind of like flip through here and there. But when I got hired with the consulting firm a year ago, I was like, well, if I'm going to be in consulting, I might as well go for it. So that's what me on my journey to get my RCDD.
So did they pressure you to get your RCDD, or that was a decision that you made yourself to pursue that?
No, it was completely my decision. I figured if I'm going to be in consulting, I might as well go for it. So I actually made it a requirement, and my employer was gracious enough to allow me time to study for about half an hour a day. Maybe 45 minutes to study, during the workday.
Wow, that was nice. Other most employers won't do that. They'll say, "You study out on your own time. Don't do it on our
Yes.
time." That's actually
Yes, they
very
were
nice.
yes, they were very gracious, and I really appreciate it.
Yep. So studying for your RCDD, it's not for the faint-hearted. Okay, to say the
That
least.
is
And
yes.
I've seen this on more than one occasion when I do my study groups. I do a study group once a year for RCDDs and stuff. And I've seen it more than once where, you know, two-thirds of the people would join up for the program and then they realize, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff in here. Or life might get in the way. There's lots of reasons. And they end up not giving up. So did you find that the experience of studying and testing or passing your RCD was it more or less difficult than you thought it was going to be when you started this journey?
So yes, as you know, that TDMM is a 2,000-page monster. And I think, like most people, reading through the first chapter was a little bit deterring and put me off for a little bit, as you can imagine. But I just kept telling myself just to keep pushing through, keep pushing through. And I'd say, first two chapters are just extremely difficult. But once you get past that, it starts to get into, the meat and potatoes of what we really do. And it became interesting, and it became more than just like a hassle to just read every day. It became interesting to something I want to learn this. This is where I am, and this is my passion. So I was able to just kind of do like 10 to 15 pages a day. um, and then uh, I was like, I just have to get through it once, and I did.
That first chapter, principles of transmission.
Yes.
It's a hard subject matter. It really is.
Yes.
And B, it's not something that most people, whatever role they happen to be playing, installer, technician, consultant, whatever role they're playing, it's not something that you deal with day in and day out. It's like you said, it's not till you get to the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth chapter where you start seeing things that you actually do, and that's where I think the
Yes.
fire. That's like throwing gas on a fire. That's where oh yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I know this is not on the list of questions, but yeah, I know you won't have a problem with this. As you were studying through studying for your RCD program, that while you're doing that journey, how long when did you start and when did you finish? Like, was it a 6 month, 12 month, however long process it was? And while you were doing that, did you find things as you were reading through the thing that you could apply to directly in your day to day job?
Yes, so I started studying, well, I should say I studied for about a year, a little over, but there was a small break in between where my employer had suggested I study for my PMP instead because I was in project management. And in the meantime, I actually had found your podcast, and you had mentioned your mentorship program. So that's when I reached out to you, and you graciously accepted me into your program. And you're the one who really motivated me to switch gears from the PMP back to the RCDD. So I'd say I studied for just about a year, but there was a small break in between. And the advice you had given me was to just, okay, where are you at? Count how many pages you have left. Divide that by how many pages you want to read a day, and then you come up with a schedule. And that's what really motivated me to be able to come up with, okay, if I keep to this schedule, if I keep to reading this many pages a day, even if I keep to just 10 pages a day, and I come up with like September. And that gave me like a little bit of buffer for, days that, might not work out. And then some time to take practice tests towards the end. But I was able to actually read through the book about 2.5 times. Like I did one full time through, and then the second time through was through my study group that I had created. And then I just wanted to really focus on some of the core chapters that I knew would be on the test for like the third time. But the second and third time were obviously a lot faster going through than that first time around, where I really wanted to just focus in on it.
I am super glad that you mentioned that buffer because as you were saying that, I was like, she forgot to say the buffer. She forgot to say the buffer because that's important. I tell people that all the time because I get asked all the time, Chuck, I want to study from RCD. Yeah, I can do it. And I give them everybody the same advice that I gave you. And I always tell them about that
Yes.
buffer because life happens. It just does.
Hmm.
Life happens. You know, just kind of for example, I had to go to Baltimore last week because my sister had to go somewhere and I had to take care of my mom. So I had to, me and my wife, we went to Baltimore. So I did everything remotely from Baltimore. And if I had been studying, that would have been might have been a wrench in my system. So you mentioned your study program. Are you still conducting that?
We're trying. Life has been busy in October. So unfortunately, my group hasn't been able to meet up in a couple of weeks. But we are attempting to meet up every week. We're still going strong, but we're like, can we push it to Friday? You're supposed to be doing it on Tuesday. And then Friday comes up. We're like, we got more deadlines. um, but it's not completely all said and done, but we are just about done with our study group. And I think same thing with you. We started with maybe 20-ish people or so, and we're down to about 3 or 4. But it doesn't matter how many people are in it. We're all just helping each other out at the end of the day.
So do they treat you differently now that you're an RCDD?
They wanted to know questions were on the test.
Oh, they want to know what questions are on the test. Yeah, don't tell them. Don't tell them. So I tell people all the time. I tell people all the time.
I just,
I'm not
I,
part of the committee. I don't know what's on the test. I'll help you with your journey, but I'm not going to give you test questions. It's just not going to happen. It just isn't. And so you mentioned the study group. So I firmly believe in study groups. If you don't have one, create one, and then have like-minded people join you, because there's a lot of benefit from accountability. You're more likely to do your 10, 15 pages of reading if you know that, when you have that weekly meeting, they're going to ask you, did you do your reading? And you don't want to say no. You want to say, yes, I did it. So there's accountability. That helps a lot. So the study group is one resource. What other resources did you use to help you get to pass your RCDD?
well, first, I can't stress enough how important it is to go through that, at least the core chapters, a second time. Because, in my opinion, the first time you're going through, you're understanding the information, but it might not be completely sticking in. When I got through the second time, at least through the more important chapters, everything kind of started to sink in a little bit more. I started to ask more in questions. And when that came into play, um, I used my study group as a resource. So we would, discuss via text questions that we might have. But YouTube was a huge resource for me. Um, and one of the biggest subjects I can think of was, the pawn architecture. I watched so many videos on that, and on networking were two big ones that I really didn't understand and really became more acquainted with the topics after that. And of course, Chuck was also one of my resources between his podcast, my mentorship with him, very helpful resources in my journey.
One of the biggest benefits is networking. And so you mentioned, yeah, so I'll put it out there. Yes, you're my mentee for this year. And I hope you get that thing. But I was also, and the reason you didn't join my study group is because I'd already had a full group. And the beautiful thing about networking is you had asked me a question about what was it? It was cameras or was it pond network? I don't remember exactly what it was. And there was somebody in my study group who had a lot of experience in that avenue. So I connected you two together, and he sent you pictures and
Yes, that was
explanations,
the
and that's one
wireless
of the
networks.
wireless notes. And that was one of the
Yes.
beautiful thing about doing this, because when you bring in a study group, my primary experience might be cabling. Your primary experience might be project management. Somebody else's primary experience might be wireless networks. And as when we come together as a group, there's a synergy where if somebody's weak on cabling, I'd be the one to help them with that. If somebody's weak on wireless, then that person would help them. You have to be an RD to create your own RCDD study group. Jasmine wasn't.
Nope.
She started it off, and she asked for some suggestions on how to do setup and running. I gave her some suggestions, and it's a group of like-minded people keeping you guys accountable, and you'd be surprised how much of a benefit there is there.
And I
Now,
almost
a
forgot to
lot of people,
mention, oh,
yes.
I almost forgot to mention the RCDD handbook was a huge resource for me. From one of your previous podcasts, they discussed the manual and where to find, what you're going to see on the exam. So after watching your podcast on that episode, I went back to it. I kind of had glanced through it before, and I really focused in on what the questions they were going to be looking for, and I highlighted sections that I was like, you know what, I think I need more work on this section, and that's what um, led me down back, going through the book, in certain sections a third time, to understand concepts a little bit better.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always tell people is make sure you read that book, because that book
Hmm.
goes through step by step by step. If somebody's considering it, it tells you how to apply for it, whether you qualify for it, because there's like 3 different ways you can qualify for it, right?
Hmm.
It tells you where this question is going to be coming from, how many hours you need to study. It is a great resource for anybody starting off, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. I had held that handbook from the day I started to the day I took the test. I kept looking through it to make sure, all right, am I on the right track here?
yep, yep. So I know that you have a family and you had a job, and then you actually changed jobs in the middle of your RCD study. So you have work duties and home duties. How did you manage all those commitments and do your studying all at the same time? Because that's somebody everybody's got to deal with, not just you, but everybody's got to deal with that.
Yes, like I mentioned, for the most part, I was able to study during the workday. And when I say, my supervisor allowed me to study, during the day. Again, like I said, I would only study for like a half an hour a day, if that. And then, I have my lunch breaks. My nighttime, I'm usually not able to spend any time. But what I did was recorded my voice reading the chapters. So as the days got closer to the test, especially the project management chapter, I would just listen to that on repeat when I wasn't able to actually open the book. So as I'm trying to get my son to sleep, I had my headphones in and I just kept listening to some of the chapters that I knew were going to be really important and going for that test.
You should have put the headphones on your son, and he could have been a future RCDD, right?
And you never know.
You never know. I I've got 6 kids, and I told all my kids, I don't care what you do, just do something that you love to do. You don't have to.
Yes.
My sons, I told them, you don't have to get in communications. Do something you love, and they're all doing something they love, and none of them are in communications. I'm happy for them. I really am.
Yeah.
So you did mention the RCD handbook. You did message. You did mention your testing experience. Now, without giving us any question that you actually had, I don't want any specific questions, but rather your thoughts on the testing process and the questions. Because one of the things I hear all the time is, Well, my test had mostly project management on it, right? That's something I hear all the time. Did the
Mhm.
questions you get, did they line up with the handbook?
So I'd have to agree that it is a lot out of the project management chapter. But if you read through the handbook, it is a lot of project management. So with that being said, really studying through that handbook is going to give you an idea of what you're looking for. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea when they think, oh, it's a project management test now. It's not for RCDDs, because as an RCDD, the topics in the project management chapter are topics that you need to know as an RCDD, such as the construction phases of a project. SD, DD, CD, that's not necessarily a project management topic. That is an RCDD topic. Um,
Hmm.
and the other thing that I always had rumblings about is it's the core chapters two, three, I'm sorry, three, four, five, a lot of that first book. And I think I did find that to be true as well. So, you need to know your closet layouts. You need to know the requirements for sizing. You need to know a lot of pathway questions, outside plant questions. So it is a little bit of everything, but I would have to agree that it is heavily focused on that project management chapter.
Now, you took your test online, correct?
No, I was scared to do that.
Oh, so
It
you
wasn't.
actually went to a facility.
Yes, it was an option. I was pretty shocked when I saw that, but I did decide to go to a facility instead, a testing
Tell
center.
us about that experience.
So I walked in, and it was pretty simple. You just have to give your ID. She asked you for your license, signed you up, got you set up with a computer, um, and you're off to the races. They show you how to use the computer in the beginning. You could flag your questions. You could tag them if you want to. So what I decided to do was I went through all 100 questions one time. And when I was finished with my questions, remember it's a multiple choice test for the most part. Um, I just decided to take a 2-minute break, take a deep breath, come in with a fresh mind. And then what I decided to do is actually go back to my flagged questions first, answer them as best as I can, which was only about 9 questions, I believe. It wasn't too many. And then from there, I decided to actually go backwards. So I started with 100 and went back down to one. And I'm so glad I did do this tactic because there was questions I did change my answer to after the fact. Um, and then they give you that, nerve-wracking, here's our survey before we tell you if you passed the test or not.
Oh, they want to do that survey before you pass or fail. That way, because if you fail, you might give them a bad. And this is not Bixie. This is we do this with my day job, right? We
Yeah.
give you the survey to fill out before we tell you your test results because we don't want your test results to be, lean negatively just because you didn't pass the test when it wasn't really. That may or may not have been an experience with the class. It's just
Yes.
you just didn't pass the test. So yeah,
Yes.
I totally understand that. I really do.
Yes. So they gave us several survey questions, and then, you're closing your eyes and you peek through one eye to see, what does it say? And then it tells you if you passed or failed. And then you
Nice.
pretty much not very monumental. You just walk out and they're like, how'd you do? you know, they print it out for you and you get to walk away.
Just for comparison, the way that I took my test, I had to drive from. I was living in DC. I had to drive to. I believe it was either Columbia, South Carolina, or it was Charleston. I can't remember. So that's a good 8-9 hour drive. So I drove down the
Mhm.
night before, stayed in a hotel, went into a room with 20, 30 other people and a proctor, took the test. You couldn't leave the room. And then you left, sealed your test up, give it back to the proctor, and you had to wait. And I want to say it was about a week to 10 days. And then I remember I got that phone call. I was like, Chuck, you passed the test. Well, actually, I failed the first time, and then I passed the second time. Which is why I'm kind of envious of you. You passed on your first attempt. And so you're a better RCDD than I am. And so when I got that phone call, I was like, okay, Charles Bowser, right? That's who you make sure. I'll make sure you called the right person. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You passed. Because like, and when I
Yeah.
got the news that you passed, I was happier than the day when I passed my RCD test. I was
Oh,
just,
thank you.
I was, first thing I went to do is I started telling everybody. I told my wife, I told my peers, it's like, she passed, she passed. So you're like the second or the third person who was either in one of my study groups or one of my mentees who's actually
Mm,
gotten their RC certification. So now you're an RCDD. And I did have the next question was, what are you going to do now? But I already you kind of switched jobs from when you started your RCDD to your new job. So that kind of already answered that question. So let me ask you this one.
mhm.
Now that you got your RCDD, how are you going to pay it forward?
Well, I did decide to sign up for the Bixby Mentorship Program. I have not heard back yet. I think it starts at the beginning of the year. I'm not completely sure how the program works, but I did put my application in, so I'm just waiting to hear back from them now. And then again, like I said, I'm still hosting the study group. Just because I passed mine, still working for the other people who need to pass their tests. I'm always available to them if they have any questions or just want to, vent.
Right,
um,
right.
and we're always, even now, like it's always going to be a question that you don't know, and someone else probably does. So
Here's a suggestion, and you don't have to do this. I'm just throwing this out there. Why don't you join Women in Bixby?
you have mentioned that, and I keep forgetting to sign up. So yes, that is on the list as well. I just keep forgetting to do it.
Gotcha. Accountability. That's mentor mentee. I'm gonna mark
Yes.
it down. 30 days from today, I will
I think
be reaching out to you to make sure that you did that.
I believe I tried to do it a while back ago, but at the moment I wasn't a member of Bixby, so I wasn't able to.
Gotcha.
Um, but now that I am a member, I believe I just haven't tried again since then. But I did
Gotcha.
join it on LinkedIn, so I do follow. I mean, not much action going on as far as I know on LinkedIn with them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you're interested, next year when I run my study group, you can be an alternate person to sit in. So every once in a while,
Sure.
like last study group, I think there was 1 week I couldn't teach the class, or it wasn't I don't teach the class. I couldn't meet for the class, and maybe you can be like a substitute RCDD, step in and run that week for me.
Yes, definitely. And
'Cause-
as much as I say I want to take a break from studying, I just can't stay away. My
Yes.
company, they also do AV and security, so it's been on my radar to look more into those exams as well. I actually had a conversation with one of the newer hires that does security, and we decided that we're going to help each other out. So she's going to come to me for any data questions, and I can go to her for any security questions. So we're going to, kind of cheer each other on. I explained to her the whole process with RCDD, and she said, "You know what? You motivated me to go for my PSP again." So I was very excited to hear that.
Nice. Nice. One final question. If you could go back to a younger Jasmine, what advice would you give her?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I'd give her any advice. I'd just keep doing what you're doing because never. That's a big one. Never stop learning. I mean, I always laugh when you say knowledge is power, but it's so true. I take that to heart. I'm always going on cabling install and maintenance, finding webinars on there. I've signed up to get a VIXA webinars for AV. I looked at the PSP website today. I forget who hosts that one. I just learned today. So knowledge is power. You never stop learning, and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. Congratulations. Remind me when you come to a Bixie conference to teach you the super secret RCDD handshake.
I will.
So I hope that you gleaned some information from that interview that might inspire you, to start the process, continue with the process, because there will be hurdles and you're going to have to overcome those hurdles. Trust me, and I bet you Jasmine would say this as well. The results are worth the journey. Until next time, everybody, remember, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.